The scoreboard lie. You can get a raise. You can get a promotion, a bigger title, a nicer apartment, maybe even a new car in the driveway. And you can be getting poorer every single month while it happens, with no alarm going off anywhere to tell you. That's not a hypothetical. That's the financial life of a huge number of people who look, from the outside, like they're winning. Here's the contradiction at the center of it. We're taught to watch one number our entire working lives. What hits the bank account? Income. It goes up. We feel like we're moving forward. It goes up again. We feel even better. But income was never the number that measures wealth. It never was. A person can double their salary and still be sliding backward, quietly, for years, while someone earning a fraction of that is building something real underneath the surface. Same paycheck, opposite direction. Same raise, different outcome. The number on your pay stub tells you almost nothing about whether your financial life is actually improving. So in this episode, we're going to fix that blind spot. You're going to learn what the number is that actually tells the truth, how to calculate it yourself in under 20 minutes, the mistakes that quietly wreck it, and how to read it over time so it catches problems while they're still small. No spread. Sheets you don't understand, no apps, no jargon. Just a framework you can use starting tonight. Let's start with why the number you've been watching your whole career was the wrong one all along. Why a bigger paycheck can quietly make you poorer. Think about what a paycheck actually is. It's a flow. It's money moving past you on its way somewhere else. It tells you exactly one thing. What came in this month? It tells you nothing, zero, about what you actually own versus what you owe. Those are two completely different questions, and we've been treating them like the same question for our entire financial lives. Picture two people earning the exact same salary, same job title, same city, same take-home pay, hitting their account on the 1st and the 15th. One of them is quietly building wealth. The other is quietly sliding into a hole. Same income, opposite trajectories. How is that possible if income is supposed to be the measure of financial success? It's possible because what happens after the money lands is the entire story. One of them is watching the paycheck arrive and feeling like that arrival is the achievement. Money's in, bills get paid, maybe something's left over for a nice dinner, and that feeling of the account not being empty gets mistaken for financial health. The other person is asking a completely different question every time money comes in. Did what I own go up? Did what I owe go down? Or did neither of those things move and I just spent it? That second person isn't necessarily earning more. They're not even necessarily saving more, dollar for dollar. They're just tracking a different number. And that number happens to be the one that's actually connected to whether they're building something. This is why a raise can feel like progress and mean nothing. If your spending expands right alongside your income, if the bigger paycheck buys a bigger apartment, a nicer car payment, a few more subscriptions, your bank balance can look exactly as fine as it always did every single month, while your actual financial position doesn't move an inch. You can get raise after raise for a decade and be in the identical spot, structurally, that you started in. The paycheck went up. The position never did. And here's the part that should bother you a little. If you're only watching income, you would never even notice this happening. There's no red flag, no warning email. Your account isn't overdrawn, your bills are paid. You feel, by every signal you're currently tracking, like you're doing fine. That feeling is real, but it's measuring the wrong thing entirely. So if income isn't the number, what is? That's next. What net worth actually is, the number that actually tells the truth, is your net worth. Don't let the term throw you. It sounds like something from a finance textbook, but it's genuinely simple. Net worth is everything you own minus everything you owe. That's the whole definition. Assets minus liabilities. One subtraction problem. Let's break down both sides so it's completely concrete. What you own, your assets, includes things like the cash sitting in your checking and savings accounts, whatever's built up in a retirement account, any investments you hold, the equity you've built in a home if you own one, meaning what it's worth minus what you still owe on the mortgage, and any other real assets, a car at its current resale value, for instance, not what you paid for it. What you owe, your liabilities, includes credit card balances, student loans, a car loan, a mortgage balance, any personal loans, and anything else where you owe money to somebody else, no matter how small it feels. Let's walk through a simple, purely illustrative example. Not a real person, just numbers to make the mechanics click. Say someone has $8,000 in a checking and savings account combined. They've got $18,000 in a retirement account. Their car, if they sold it today, is worth about $9,000. That's $35,000 in assets. Now the other side. They've got $4,000 left on a car loan, $6,000 in credit card debt, and $22,000 in student loans. That's $32,000 in liabilities. Subtract the two, $35,000 minus $32,000. Their net worth is $3,000. Notice what that number does that a bank balance never could. It accounts for the loan on the car, not just the car. It accounts for the credit card debt sitting there quietly, not just what's visible in checking. It gives you one honest number that reflects the entire structure of your financial life, not just the slice of it that happens to be liquid and sitting in front of you today. That's it. That's the whole concept. Everything you own minus everything you owe equals the one number that tells you where you actually stand. Simple as that sounds, almost nobody actually does the math. And the reason isn't what you'd think. The real reason almost nobody calculates it. If net worth is this simple one subtraction problem, arguably 10 minutes of work, why does almost nobody in their 20s or 30s ever actually sit down and calculate their own? The easy answer is laziness, or not knowing how. But that's not really it, and I think you'll recognize the real reason the second you hear it. The real reason is avoidance. Calculating your net worth means turning a feeling into a number. Right now, most people carry around a vague sense of, I think I'm doing okay. That sense is comfortable precisely because it's vague. It can flex. It can absorb a bad month without collapsing. It doesn't have decimal points. A feeling like that is forgiving in a way a number never is. A number doesn't flex. A number is a verdict. And that's the part that makes people avoid the exercise entirely. Even smart, disciplined people who track their spending down to the coffee they bought yesterday. Because there's a specific fear sitting underneath it. What if I do the math and the number is bad? What if it's negative? What if it confirms something I've been quietly worried about and not looking at directly? So people opt for the comfortable feeling instead of the checkable number. And look, that's a completely human thing to do. Nobody wants to feel like their financial life just got graded and came back with a bad mark. But here's the problem with staying in the feeling instead of the number. The feeling can't tell you anything is wrong until it's already very wrong. It doesn't move in small increments the way a real number does. It just sits there being vague right up until a moment when it can't be vague anymore. An emergency expense with no cushion, a missed payment, a moment where the truth becomes impossible to avoid. At that point, you don't get to ease into the number. It arrives all at once at the worst possible time. Calculating your net worth now, while things feel fine, when there's no crisis forcing your hand, is not a punishment. It's the opposite. It's choosing to see the number while you still have room to do something about it, instead of being handed it later with no warning and no time to prepare. And once you actually do the math, something else becomes obvious. This number does something a bank balance never could. Why net worth beats your bank balance. Here's a comparison that makes this click immediately. Your bank balance is like stepping on a bathroom scale. It gives you one number right now, and that number is influenced by whatever happened in roughly the last day. Did you just get paid? Did rent just come out? A checking account balance is basically a snapshot taken about 24 hours after payday, and it swings around constantly for reasons that have nothing to do with your actual financial health. Net worth is more like a body composition scan. It's not just weight, it's the structure underneath. What's muscle? What's fat? How it's distributed? What direction it's trending? Two people can step on a regular scale and see the exact same number and be in completely different physical condition. Same thing with money. Two people can have the exact same bank balance on the 15th of the month and be in wildly different financial positions, because one of them has $40,000 in debt sitting behind that balance, and the other has none. That's what makes net worth the better compass. It doesn't care what day of the month it is. It doesn't spike because payday happened to land yesterday. It captures the whole structure at once, the debt, the assets, the direction things are moving, in a single honest figure. A bank balance answers, how much cash do I have access to right this second? Net worth answers, is my financial life, as a whole, getting stronger or weaker? Those are very different questions, and only one of them actually tells you where you're headed. This is also why you can feel financially fine and be net worth negative, or feel financially anxious and be net worth positive and improving. The feeling and the reality can point in completely opposite directions, because the feeling is built on the bank balance snapshot, and the reality is built on the full structure. If you want to know which one is true for you, there's only one way to find out. Let's actually calculate it. Here's the 4-step framework, and it takes less time than you'd think. The 4-step framework you can do in 20 minutes. This is the part where we make it real. 4 steps. Genuinely under 20 minutes if you sit down and do it in one sitting. Step 1. List every asset at its current fair value, not what you paid for it. This trips people up constantly. Your car isn't worth what the sticker said 3 years ago. It's worth what it would sell for today. Your home, if you own one, isn't worth the purchase price. It's worth roughly what it would sell for now, minus what you still owe on the mortgage. Go through everything: checking, savings, retirement accounts, investment accounts, any real estate equity, any other assets of real value. Write down today's number for each one, not history. Step 2. List every liability, including the ones most people forget about. Credit cards and student loans are the obvious ones. Most people remember those without prompting. But go further. That 0% financing plan on a couch or a laptop, still a real balance, still owed, still counts. A loan from a family member you've been quietly paying back, still counts, even though nobody's sending you a monthly statement about it. Buy now, pay later balances split across a few different apps. They add up, and they're easy to forget, precisely because they're spread out and don't feel like real debt. Write every single one down. Step 3. Subtract. Total assets minus total liabilities. That's it. That's your net worth right now, today. Step 4. And this is the one almost everyone skips. Write the date next to the number. A net worth figure with no date attached is nearly useless, because a single number, on its own, can't tell you anything about direction. Is it going up or down? Is it improving or getting worse? You cannot answer that question from one isolated number. You can only answer it by comparing today's dated number to the next one. So the date isn't an afterthought. It's what turns a static fact into a trackable trend, which, as we're about to get into, is the entire point. Before we get to that trend, though, there are a few mistakes that quietly throw the whole calculation off. And they're worth catching now. The mistakes that quietly wreck the number. A few specific mistakes show up over and over when people calculate this for the first time, and each one can make the number meaningfully wrong, sometimes in a way that's more flattering than reality, sometimes less. The first is counting an asset at what you paid for it instead of what it's actually worth today. Cars are the classic example. If you bought a car for $30,000 2 years ago and you plug $30,000 into your asset column, your net worth is inflated by whatever that car has depreciated since. And that gap can be substantial. Always use current resale value, not purchase price. The second mistake goes the other direction. People sometimes drop a depreciating asset entirely, reasoning that since it's losing value, it doesn't really count. That's wrong. A depreciating asset is still a real asset. It's just a shrinking one, and it still belongs in the calculation at its current worth. Leaving it out entirely just makes the number less accurate, not more honest. The third is forgetting the invisible debts. We touched on this in the framework, but it deserves its own call-out because it's genuinely the most common gap. Buy now, pay later balances, a 0% promotional financing plan, a loan from family. These don't show up on a single unified statement the way a mortgage or a credit card does, so they're easy to simply forget exist. But forgetting a debt doesn't make it not owed. It just makes your calculated number wrong, and wrong in the direction that hides a problem instead of revealing it. The fourth mistake isn't really a math error, it's a comparison error, and it might be the most damaging one. Comparing your number, your real, honest, calculated number, to somebody else's curated version of wealth that you're seeing on a screen. Nobody posts their liabilities. Nobody's captioning a photo with their credit card balance or how much they still owe on the car in the driveway. What you're comparing yourself to is a highlight reel of the asset side with the liability side deliberately cropped out. That comparison isn't just unflattering, it's not even measuring the same thing. So it's not a comparison at all. Avoid those 4 traps, and your number will actually be accurate. But even an accurate number on its own isn't the whole story. What matters even more is what it does over time. Why the trend matters more than the number. Here's something important to sit with. A single net worth snapshot, all by itself, can be misleading in both directions. A number that looks scary on day one might actually represent someone early in a completely normal, healthy trajectory. A number that looks reassuring might be quietly eroding in a way that single snapshot can't show you at all. The number alone doesn't tell you the story. The trend does. Think about it this way. A negative net worth, say from student loans, that is shrinking every quarter, getting less negative each time you check it, is genuinely a success story. That's someone actively climbing out, making real progress, even though the number itself still has a minus sign in front of it. If you only looked at the raw figure without the direction, you'd think that person was in trouble. In direction, they're actually winning. Now flip it. A comfortably positive net worth that's quietly declining, a little smaller every time it's checked, is an early warning sign, and it's one that almost nobody else in your life is going to give you. Your friends aren't going to notice. Your bank isn't going to send you an alert. The number just quietly erodes, month after month, while every surface signal, the paid bills, the account that's never overdrawn, keeps telling you everything's fine. This is exactly why we build in that date from step 4. Without it, you cannot see the trend. And without the trend, the number is just a snapshot that can be read almost any way you want, depending on your mood that day. With it, the number becomes something else entirely, a compass. Checked every few months, it tells you, in a way nothing else in your financial life does, whether you're actually moving forward or backward, regardless of how any single month happened to feel. And once you can see that direction clearly, it stops being just information. It starts driving decisions, turning the number into decisions. A trend line isn't just something to look at, it's something to act on, and the action looks different depending on which direction it's moving. If the trend is declining, the correct response isn't vague guilt It's a specific question. What changed? Did spending creep up somewhere without you noticing? Did a new debt get added? A car loan, a larger credit card balance carried month to month? Did income actually drop? A job change, fewer hours, something concrete? That question has an answerable, specific answer, and finding it is infinitely more useful than a general feeling of "I should do better with money." Vague guilt doesn't fix anything because it doesn't point anywhere. A specific question does. If the trend is rising, that's the feedback loop that makes everything else about managing money feel real instead of abstract. This is the part people miss. Saving money and paying down debt can feel completely invisible in the moment. You skip a purchase, you make an extra payment, and nothing visibly changes that day. There's no reward, no signal. But when you check your net worth next quarter and the number moved in the right direction, that invisible discipline suddenly has proof. It's not abstract anymore. It's a number that went up because of specific choices you made. That kind of proof is what makes the habit sustainable, because most people don't stick with things that feel like they're accomplishing nothing. And a rising trend is exactly the evidence that says otherwise. In both directions, the trend converts your financial life from a feeling you're guessing at into a signal you can actually respond to. That's the entire value of tracking it over the single, isolated number. So how often should you actually be checking it? There's a right answer, and it's probably less often than you'd assume. How often to check it? Here's the cadence that actually works. Roughly once a quarter, around the start of each new season. Not daily, not weekly, quarterly. That might sound infrequent if you're used to checking your bank balance constantly. But there's a real reason behind the spacing. Checking too often turns a long-term compass into a source of short-term anxiety, and it actively works against you, especially once investments are part of the picture. Markets move day to day for reasons that have nothing to do with your actual financial trajectory. If you're calculating net worth weekly, or worse, daily, you're mostly just watching noise. And noise triggers reactions that a longer view would tell you are completely unnecessary. A dip on Tuesday that would have resolved itself by the following month can trigger a panic sell, or a spiral of anxious checking, or a decision made from fear rather than from actual signal. Quarterly gives the number enough time to actually mean something. Enough time for a bad month to be absorbed into a broader trend rather than mistaken for a crisis. Enough time for genuine progress, an extra debt payment, a few months of disciplined spending to actually show up as a visible shift rather than getting lost in the day-to-day static. It's frequent enough that you'll catch a real problem while it's still small and fixable, and infrequent enough that you won't burn yourself out treating every market wobble like a 5-alarm fire. Think of it like checking your weight. Daily weigh-ins bounce around with water retention and what you ate the night before and tell you almost nothing useful. A monthly or quarterly check shows you the actual trend, the thing that was true the whole time underneath all that daily noise. Net worth works exactly the same way. Give it room to actually tell you something. Knowing the right cadence is one thing. Actually sticking to it for years is a different problem, and it's the one that trips up almost everyone. Making the habit stick. The reason most good financial habits die isn't that people don't understand them. It's that nothing anchors them to an actual moment in time. "I'll check my net worth regularly" is a sentence with no trigger attached, and sentences with no trigger quietly disappear within a month or two, buried under everything else going on in a normal life. The fix is to attach the calculation to something that's already happening on its own. The first weekend of each new quarter works well, because it's a fixed, recognizable marker, not something you have to remember to remember. Tax season is another natural anchor. Since you're already gathering financial documents and thinking about the whole picture of your finances anyway, so adding one more number to that existing process costs you almost nothing extra. A recurring calendar reminder, set once, is the simplest version of all. It just shows up on the date and does the remembering for you. And keep the tracking method genuinely simple. This does not need an elaborate app, a dashboard, a subscription tool with charts and projections. A single row in a spreadsheet, or honestly even a note on your phone, date, assets, liabilities, net worth, is completely sufficient. The value here isn't in the sophistication of the tool. It's in the consistency of showing up to do the calculation, quarter after quarter, for years. A beautifully designed app you stop opening after 6 weeks is worth less than a plain text note you actually update 4 times a year without fail. Simple, anchored to something that already happens, and low friction enough that future you, tired, busy, distracted, will still actually do it. That's what makes this stick for the long haul, and the long haul is the entire point, because a number you only ever look at once was never a compass to begin with. So let's bring the whole thing together. The full picture. Here's the shift in one sentence. Stop watching the paycheck. Start watching the position. Income is a flow. It tells you what moved past you this month, and nothing about where you actually stand. Net worth is a position. Everything you own minus everything you owe, and it's the number that actually reflects whether your financial life is getting stronger or weaker. Quick recap of how to actually use this. Net worth is simply assets minus liabilities. One subtraction. Nothing more complicated than that. The reason almost nobody calculates it isn't laziness, it's avoidance. Because a number feels like a verdict in a way a vague feeling never does, and calculating it now before a crisis forces the issue is the version of that verdict you actually want. The 4-step framework gets you there in under 20 minutes. List every asset at current value. List every liability, including the ones that are easy to forget, subtract, and write the date next to the result, because a number without a date can never show you a direction. Watch for the common mistakes. Current value instead of purchase price. Keeping depreciating assets in the calculation instead of dropping them. Catching the invisible debts. And leaving the social media comparisons out of it entirely, since they were never measuring the same thing to begin with. And above all, remember that the trend matters more than any single number, checked roughly once a quarter, anchored to something that already happens in your life. So it actually sticks for years instead of fading out after one attempt. That's the whole compass. Not complicated, not something that requires an app or a financial advisor to get started. Just 20 honest minutes and a willingness to look at the actual number instead of the comfortable feeling standing in for it. If this gave you something you're going to actually use, stick around. There's more like it here on the channel.